A few years ago, I had the wonderful privilege of being able to do a silent 8-day retreat at the Jesuit Center in Boston. My retreat guide for these days was a real veteran of the Spirit, a Jesuit priest. He must have been about 12 to 15 years older than myself. And every day I would have about 30, 45 minutes with him, and I would share with him some of my experience of the previous day. And then he would offer me a biblical passage that I could perhaps pray with in the coming day. About halfway through this retreat, I discovered the library at the retreat center. Found my way to the library, found a biblical commentary on the passage that he had given me, and it was full of wonderful, wonderful insights, which I wrote down into my journal. And the next day when I sat down with the retreat guide, I opened my journal and I began to share with him some of these great insights that I had discovered the day before. And as I shared them with him, he looked decidedly bored. I think he even yawned. And then he stopped me and he said, "Trevor," and he shared with me some words that really scorched their way into my own heart. He said to me, "Trevor, insight is the consolation prize. Encounter is first prize." And I haven't forgotten those words. Encounter is the first prize. Insight, the consolation prize. Now I begin like that because the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius are all about encounter. They are all about encountering the living Christ and giving to Christ the opportunity and the space to encounter us within our own unique circumstances and social situation. The spiritual exercises are not about insights. They are not about getting more information. They are not about accumulating more head knowledge. The spiritual exercises are about encounter. And in the first week of the spiritual exercises, the exercises are divided into 4 weeks, and each week represents a particular phase of the exercises. In the first week of the spiritual exercises, we encounter the merciful Christ who forgives us. Now, the first week takes place against the background that at the heart of this universe, there lies a great love, a personal love, a Trinitarian love, a love that has desired each one of us into existence. A love that creates us, even now, moment by moment by moment. A great love that loves us through and through and calls us by name. A great love that is profoundly merciful and is eager to forgive us. Now, one of the purposes of being prepared to do the spiritual exercises is that even before we do them, we need to have some experience of that great love. We need to have, as it were, a foundational experience that we are loved by God. And when we have that foundational experience, we are ready to engage the spiritual exercises. And the good news of the first week of the spiritual exercises is that we are dearly beloved sinners. Dearly beloved sinners. Now you may be wondering how in the first week of the exercises, you may be wondering how Ignatius facilitates this encounter with the forgiving Christ. And I just want to share with you a few thoughts. And I hope so much that they will give you a glimpse of how this encounter takes place. In the first week, we encounter the forgiving Christ as we ask God to reveal to us the depths of our own disordered and sinful tendencies. Now, you may be wondering why we need to ask God to reveal this to us. I think for Ignatius, there are at least two reasons. On the one hand, Ignatius doesn't want us to go digging around in our lives to try to uncover every sin. He knows from his own painful experience with scruples at Manresa, he knows from his own experience that when we go digging around to unearth every sin that we have committed, we end up in the desolation of self-judgment, self-rejection, self-accusation. However, when God, in God's love, reveals to us the depths of our own disordered and sinful tendencies, that revelation comes with the loving light of God's mercy. We realize in that moment just how deeply we need to know God's merciful love. Perhaps I can offer you an inadequate illustration of what I'm trying to say. Let's say that you go to the doctor because you're worried about something that is wrong in your life. You go to the doctor and she makes an accurate diagnosis of your condition. In that moment, her diagnosis of your condition brings with it a certain relief, a certain hope for healing and recovery. And I think that's what Ignatius has in mind when he invites us to come to God and say to God, God, would you please just show me, would you reveal to me the depths of my own disordered and sinful tendencies. On the other hand, I think Ignatius wants us to ask God for the grace to reveal to us the depths of our own sinfulness, because Ignatius knows that we are blind to them. You know, so often we have the tendency to locate sinfulness at the level of our actions and our behaviors. But our sinful actions and behaviors are only the tip of the iceberg. Our sinful actions and behaviors arise from those disorders within our heart. And as a Jesuit scholar and author who has meant so much to me, Jared Hughes says, the ultimate disorder of our lives lies in the refusal of our heart to let God be God in our lives. That sin, ultimately, is our refusal, our stubborn refusal to let God be God in our lives. Or to put that in plain English, we want to call the shots. We want to make ourselves the center of everything we do. We want to play God in our own lives and the lives of others. And the consequences of that reverberate tragically throughout our lives. The second thing I want to say is this. In the first week, we encounter the forgiving Christ as we share with him these disordered and sinful tendencies that God reveals to us. Now you may think to yourself, and this would be a great wondering, you may wonder, why share with Christ what Christ has already revealed to us? That's a good question, and it deserves a very thoughtful response. We share with Christ our disordered and sinful tendencies not to give Christ information that he does not have. We share our disordered, sinful tendencies with him because we want to give him access into our lives. We want to give access to his grace, to his forgiveness, and to his mercy more deeply into our lives. Some years ago, just before she was about to get married, my daughter had a cycling accident. And I remember when I was called to the ICU unit and I walked into that unit and I saw her after that accident and I saw the disfigurement of her face and how her jaw had been fractured in so many places. And I knew in that moment that she wasn't going to be able to be married. Her recovery took over a year. And about halfway through that recovery, she had to undergo a very difficult operation lasting a number of hours. And on the Sunday before that operation, she came to hear me preach, which is always a great gift to a father. And after the service, she came up to me and she just put her head into my shoulder. And she said to me, "Dad, I'm scared." Now, as a father, I knew she was scared. In that moment, I didn't say to her, "Joni, you don't have to tell me that you're scared because I know." She wasn't giving me information. She was giving me access into her life. And by sharing herself with me, she was giving access for my love and my care and my compassion to enter more deeply into her experience. And as a result of her sharing herself with me like that, our relationship took a different trajectory as it would have had she not shared. It's exactly the same in our relationship with Christ. That as we share with him the depths of our disorder, as it is revealed to us, we offer him that access for his mercy and for his forgiveness and for his grace to enter more deeply into the deepest places of our being. The third thing I want to say is this. In the first week, we encounter the forgiving Christ as we come before the crucified Christ with our disordered tendencies, with our sinful attachments. Ignatius knows that it is at the cross that the love of God is revealed to us in flesh and blood. Ignatius knows that it is at the cross where we can say sorry for our disorders and for the way in which we have been complicit in the evils of this world. There is a place where we can say sorry. Ignatius knows that it is at the cross where new beginnings and fresh starts can be made. Ignatius knows that it is at the cross where the loving stream of God's forgiveness flows into our lives and into our world. And so he invites us imaginatively to come before the crucified Christ and to share with him our disordered tendencies, our sinful tendencies, to share with him the inadequacy of our own response to him over the years, to share with him perhaps the new desires that are being born within our life as we contemplate the crucified one. I remember when I did that first experience. It was profoundly moving for me as I came before the crucified one, as I shared with him the mess and the muck of my life, as I found myself caught in his own loving and merciful gaze. I remember the words of that great Methodist hymn come into my mind in that moment. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, should die for me? And I remember how in that moment there was born within me, deep from within me, a new desire, a fresh desire to get to know this one, to love him, and to follow him. And that's what the rest of the spiritual exercises are all about. I want to end by sharing with you a beautiful, beautiful image of forgiveness which I carry around with me. I want to read it to you, some words from Austin Farrer, the Anglican theologian. God forgives me, for God takes my head between his hands and turns my face to his to make me smile at him. And though I struggle and hurt those hands, for they are human, though divine, human and scarred with nails. Though I hurt them, they do not let me go until he has smiled me into smiling. And that is the forgiveness of God.
The danger of a person never moving beyond insight into an encounter is that it all stays in their head. That basically, whatever it is that they're grappling with becomes a cerebral thing. Whereas for Ignatius, he wants us to make the journey from the head to the heart. And therefore, he talks about encounter, most especially an encounter with the living God. And he experienced this in his own life because before his Loyola experience, his convalescence, I think God maybe was just a concept, was maybe just something he had a few insights into. But there was no relationship there. And so an encounter leads us into a relationship. And relationships, and especially a relationship with Christ, is what changes us and transforms us and takes us to another place.
I think the danger of a person never moving beyond insight into encounter is that their experience will stay at a head level and not penetrate into the heart and the gut. And that's when I think it really becomes life-changing and life-transforming.
I think the danger of never moving beyond insight towards encounter is that our experience then would remain at the intellectual, rational level. And that is an important dimension of our experience, but somehow we never move beyond it into the world of relationship and interaction. And for me, it's the experience of encounter that takes me beyond insight, particularly in my relationships, from knowing about to knowing.
The revelation of sin and the experience of God's mercy is critically important because it's about allowing ourselves to recognize the places where we need healing, where we need grace, where we need a deeper sense of peace, so that God can pour that mercy into us and allow us to experience the deep gratitude that comes from knowing that I don't respond generously, and yet God forgives me. And that inspires in me a desire to love this God more deeply.
I think the revelation of God's love and mercy and the revelation of our sinfulness, for me, is so critical because God meets us in the reality of our lives. And the reality of our lives is that we are both, on the one hand, deeply beloved, and on the other hand, we are deeply broken. And it's within that context of our own brokenness or our own disorderedness that God's mercy meets us. And I'm able to experience God's mercy, the depths of God's mercy, to the degree that I'm able also to face the depths of my own disorder and attachments.